When the blood in your veins returns to the sea, and earth in your bones returns to the ground, perhaps then you will remember that this land does not belong to you. It is you who belong to this land. Hey, what's happening, everybody? This is Dwayne, and you are tuned in to the Off Grit podcast. Today, we're going to talk about land. And specifically, I'm going to tell you a general outline of the land buying process. And this is only from my perspective. So obviously, if you're going to buy land, you're going to want to do lots of research. But I'm going to kind of give you the layman to layman explanation here and just give you a general broad outline of what you can expect and some of the things that I learned along the way. So here we go. All right. So first off, let me tell you this. The process of buying land is going to be different depending on where you live, of course. It's a big country. And obviously, every state, every county, every district is going to have its own set of rules that are going to vary from place to place. So that's the first thing I want to start off with. The second thing I want to say that is probably more important is that you do not need to have land in order to be a successful homesteader. Let me repeat that. You do not need to have land in order to be a successful homesteader. Land is just something that obviously there's advantages to having it. And however, as we go along here, I'll tell you that there are also disadvantages to having land. So it's not always just like that grass is greener on the other side. Overall, I'm happy that we have land, of course, but I will say that there are some pitfalls that come with having land. So just be aware of that. So when I tell you about the land buying process, obviously I'm not a real estate agent. I'm not an expert. I'm just going to tell you my experience, and I should say our experience, my wife and I, and just tell you what you can expect. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you got to ask yourself, remember in the last podcast, that question, why? Why do you want land? Like, get it as specific as you can. Like, why specifically do you want to buy land? So for us, I'll tell you what happened. We were living in an HOA community. Now, we can go into why you wouldn't go to an HOA community in the first place, but let's just say at the time, it didn't matter as much to us. All right. We were just doing the grind. So when I started getting into homesteading, I really started getting into the gardening side of things. I've told you before that that's like kind of a gateway to homesteading. So I really started getting into gardening, and I really wanted to expand the garden in the backyard we had. So one of the things that I was reading up on was a high tunnel, and basically I wanted this big shade cloth over top of the crops. So, when it gets past 100 degrees in the desert, we could keep the plants shaded, but I didn't want the shade cloth too close to the plants. Otherwise, it would have just baked the plants. So I built the high tunnel and had this shade cloth that was it's probably about 6 to 7 feet above the plants. Now, what happened was we have roaming HOA enforcers, that go around your community, and they write up people for weeds and all kinds of things. Well, we got a notice saying that I wasn't allowed to have that shade cloth in our backyard, and we would have to get permission in order to have it. So of course, that's really going to be a slap in the face, right? Like when you get a notice like that, of course you're going to get defensive, and you're going to probably get angry about it, and you're just going to be like, you got to be kidding me. I'm basically just trying to raise crops. I'm not doing anything crazy here. This is just a shade cloth. And it was actually pretty professional looking. I made it look nice. It was nice and like a hoop house, and it was clean. It was a brand new shade cloth. But anyways, that was the start of it for me. And then we had chickens. We weren't supposed to have chickens. And just started feeling like a prisoner in our own community, you know? So that was it for us. And that's what got us going into the land buying process. Because what happened was I started looking around the county that we lived in and realized that there were just restrictions everywhere. Like, no matter where I looked, there were basically just restrictions specifically on agriculture. So that is what you're going to run into with the homesteading. You're going to find that in at least in a lot of places, that it's not going to really mix well with the city life, because city life, the zoning is going to, and the ordinances are going to tell you that you're not allowed to do this, 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 and this. And a lot of the things that homesteaders want to do are this, 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 and this. So how do you go about it? All right. So the first thing that I did was I went to some Facebook groups. Now, whether or not you like Facebook, I can't stand Facebook really, but it does have its uses. And what you can do is you can go into some Facebook groups specifically for homesteading, and you can look geographically where you want to go or where you're thinking about going. So let's say you're in Arizona and you want to do homesteading. Well, you could do Arizona homesteading. I actually had a group called Arizona Homesteadings. I closed it down just because it was too much drama eventually, but the group was good general information for homesteading. And once you join a group like that, you can just kind of see the alerts from the group. You're going to see a lot of stuff you don't care about, but you could even go on there and ask questions, say, which counties are most homestead friendly? And you're going to get probably 50 different answers. But what you will do is you'll get a general consensus of where the good places are to homestead. And that's how I started, as I just kind of got a broad lay of the land, so to speak, of where would be good places that have the least amount of regulations that would regulate the homesteading lifestyle that I wanted. So we ended up finding some different counties, because another thing you got to consider is if you work, right? Like, are you going to be able to move far away from your job? A lot of times you're not. Like, you might be able to move like a county or two over, but there's a certain geographic like parameter that you might have to, or perimeter you might have to stay in. So that's something you're also going to have to consider. So for us, we were fortunate enough to live in a place where the next county over, which is Cochise County for me, we were in Pima County in Arizona, has a completely different lifestyle. It's basically more of a agrarian type place. So ag is like a big thing where I'm at here, and it's kind of the backbone of this community. So the zoning out here in this particular county is a lot more agriculture friendly. So what you do is you find those places first. And then we found the general place that we wanted to look. And then this is an important next step. This is where you're going to stop using the Facebook group for a while, because you're going to get really misleading information, because you're going to have 40 different people giving you 40 different answers on something they don't know anything about. So you can get general information from these Facebook groups, but that's where it stops. So once you get, the county you want, the area you want, next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try to contact the county planner. The county planner might be called something different depending on what state you're in. They may not even have them, but you want to find the closest thing to a county planner for the county that you're looking at. And most of the times, every county is going to have a website. It is 2024 after all. So look for that area, the section that does county planning or planning and zoning. And even if you have to wait for a call back, it's going to be worth it. And before you do make that phone call or you do that online chat, have yourself a list of questions. As many as you can, because you're going to get that person on the phone and you're going to get the information directly from somebody who knows what they're talking about or should know what they're talking about, because that's their job. So ask all the zoning questions you want. Make sure you're specific. You don't have to give them your personal information. You can even, they'll even look at the parcels that you're looking at online and tell you what the zoning is for that parcel or what you can and can't do there. So that's the first step. Now, if you can get a good county planner, you're probably going to get most of your questions answered, and they'll even throw you some more information that you may not even thought of. So that is a very valuable phone call right there, folks. So once you do that, then what you would want to do is see if you can find a comprehensive guide, like a PDF or some type of a book that will give you a comprehensive guide of planning and zoning regulations. Now, the county planner, you could just ask them, do they have a comprehensive guide? Because you might have heard this on a podcast. Do you guys have a comprehensive guide or some type of a book that I can download so I have this information to look at? And for the most part, I looked at different states and different counties. I did see it in at least half of them. And you can actually just go online and you can download it. Now, it's going to be anywhere from 50 to 200 pages of planning and zoning information. It's basically going to be a book of regulations of what you can and can't do in different areas of the county. It's very valuable. So what ends up happening is you will find out what zoning you need. Where I'm at, it's called RU4. RU-4. And what that is that's rural zoning. And what that means is 4 acres, meaning that every parcel in this area has to have a minimum of 4 acres, and it's considered rural, which means that it's more friendly towards agriculture, and they want to try to maintain the look, the aesthetics, the general tradition of agriculture in this area. So you can't do like industrial here. And this isn't zoned for, say, residential. So they don't want a bunch of developments out here. So every place where I'm at has a minimum of 4 acres around it. Most places have more, but that's the minimum. So when you have a place like that, almost everybody out here is like-minded when it comes to ag, and it's not anything new. So if they hear chickens, it's not a big deal. I mean, chickens are chickens. Most people out here have chickens where I'm at. So anyways, once you know what area you want, then starts the land search, right? So one of the things you can do is you can go online and you can do a parcel search for the county that you want to look at. Now, once again, this is state specific, county specific. They're not all the same, but I did notice that the ones that I looked at, the few states that I did look at, all kind of have the same software they're running. It's GIS Parcel Search, Geographic Information System, I believe. And this Parcel Search, you can go on there. You'll have to click through a few screens, and then you'll go on there, and then you'll be able to zoom in. And if it's a good county as far as they've got everything updated, you'll be able to zoom in and you'll be able to click on all the different parcels. When you click on these parcels, you'll be able to see sometimes, not in every state, but in some places where I was at, where we're at, you could click on it. You could see who owns the property. You could actually have a separate tab where you could click on tax information, and that will take you over to the assessor site, the tax assessor or the recorder, and you can actually see more information on the property. You can see how long the people have owned it. It'll give you their mailing address. It'll tell you how much they paid in taxes on the property. It's pretty crazy how much personal information's out there. But it's public information, so you can go on there and you can pull that information, and maybe you can start looking now to say, okay, well, this is what we did. I'll tell you what we did. My wife was listening to a podcast, and she found a podcast that talked about buying land and some of the different tactics that people have used that were a little non-traditional. And one of the tactics was to do a parcel search like I just talked about, find parcels that may look like the people aren't using it. Maybe it's just vacant land and it's just been sitting there for a while, and send letters. Now, if you own land, you've probably gotten these letters before, but usually they're from like a pre-sorted first class. You'll get it. It's just a computer printed out letter saying, we want to buy your property, and they'll lowball you on some ridiculous offer. So what we did, though, was we actually hand wrote letters, and we were just as genuine as possible because we really just wanted to buy land to homestead. We're not trying to flip properties or anything like that. So we would say, hello, this is Dwayne and Teresa. We saw that your parcel, is located in this county, and we wanted to know if you might be interested in selling the parcel because we would like to start a homestead and raise our family in this area. Thank you. And there were a few other things in there, but just kept it simple. Left our phone number and signed it. Very personal, right? And of course, we sent those out and we got a few responses back, surprisingly. Now, a few of the responses were just basically telling us they weren't interested in selling. A couple said, don't contact me again. But we did get someone that was interested in selling the parcel. So fast forward, and long story short, we ended up going into escrow to buy this parcel because it worked. So basically, we ended up buying land from a private owner by sending letters. That was a technique that we actually heard on a podcast. So there you go. More reason to listen to a podcast. So fast forward, we get in contact with the people that own the parcel, and it ends up being a church that owns it. And what had happened was when we were doing our research, we would click on parcels and we would see, to make sure they were in the place we wanted, where the zoning was proper for what we wanted to do. And we would look for places where it looked like the people that own the parcel did not have a house on the parcel. And you can actually see this on the parcel map. It'll show you that parcels that don't actually have a physical address on them. And those are the ones that don't have houses on them. And if there's a house on them, you'll see a physical address when you click on that parcel. So there are a lot of those types of parcels out here. So we started just clicking on some of them and just seeing like, looks like, and we would click the tax information, and then we would look and see that, okay, these guys have had this parcel for 10 years and they're not doing anything with it, but they're just paying the taxes on it every year. So we thought, that'd probably be a good place to start because, believe it or not, there's some people, or in this case, a nonprofit that just was paying taxes on this parcel every year and didn't really have any intentions to do anything with it. So we ended up finding, like I said, a few people got back to us and the price was right. So we decided, you know what, let's do it. So this is where it'll start. I'm going to start getting into the weeds a little bit, but I'm not going to go too far into detail because I'm not a real estate agent, and I did not use a real estate agent. So that's something you need to know. So what we did was we talked to the owner and we decided that we're interested in buying, and we decided to use a title company. Now, whether or not you use a real estate agent, at least this is what I learned, is completely up to you. You can totally buy land without a real estate agent. All right. Now, buying a house or something like an industrial property is a little different because there's a lot more things that you have to be concerned with. So I don't know about buying a house without a real estate agent, but buying land is a lot simpler. At least for us it was. So we decided, you know what? We don't really need a real estate agent for this, but we do need a title company, because the title company, they're going to act as an escrow, first of all. So they're kind of like almost like an umpire, and they're going to kind of facilitate the process here. They're going to do a title search on the property. They're going to go into detail and find out if there's any encumbrances on the property, because I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you buy a property from a guy And he says he owns it free and clear, and you take his word for it. You buy the parcel, you get the deed and all that stuff. 5 years later, a woman shows up on your doorstep, and it's the sister of the guy you bought the parcel from. And she says, you know what? I own 50% of this parcel, and I want 50% of it or whatever. Well, now you got a problem. Now, you don't know the situation, like I said. There could be a history. Maybe that parcel was willed to that guy, but it was willed to him and his sister, and you didn't know that, and he turned around and went behind her back. Maybe they don't get along, and he went and sold the property behind her back, and she had no idea. So this is the kind of thing that can happen, and there's a lot of other examples I could give you, but that's a good one. So the title company, they're going to do a background check on that parcel, and they're going to make sure that there are no encumbrances on the land. They're going to check for easements. They're going to do a general survey of the parcel. They're going to give you all that information, and you're going to get an insurance policy. And that policy will basically cover if the title company made a mistake, then you will have coverage on there for the value of the land most of the time. And I'm going to tell you, we'll tell you in a different podcast because it's a whole private episode, and I'll tell it someday. But this is the kind of thing that can happen, and it did happen to us. So we actually were able to utilize, my wife hates that word, but we were able to use our policy from a title company. So we've had that happen to us before. So it's great protection, and I would not recommend buying land without using a title company. Real estate agent, that's up to you. But title company, no way. Because that is just a very, very good peace of mind. Unless you're a professional and you're in the land flipping business and you have a lot of experience in it, you really don't know what you're getting into. There's a lot of things that can happen. And I learned that. So that's what we did, all right? We used the title company, and here we are. We have land now. Now, there are other things here that are probably worth talking about. And I could make this a super long podcast, but I'm going to try to keep it. Just so you know, I might skip some things. And if I do skip anything, feel free to send an email or even text me, or you can add to it if I said something that's not correct. I try to give you as accurate of information as possible, but I'm human and I make mistakes. So anyways, one of the things that I learned when you buy land is that you definitely want to go visit the land. So before we bought the parcel, we came out and visited the land. We went to the physical parcel. We checked it out. We walked around. We saw, how are we going to get to this parcel? Wow, this is pretty rural out here. We realized, when we got out here, how rural it was for us. Said, oh, okay, so there's some issues here. We're going to have to clear this area out. We're going to have to do this, because until you go to the property, you're not going to know how much work might have to go into that parcel in order to even get to it in the first place. Because there might be access, but no one may have used it for 15 years, and there's nothing but trees and growth everywhere. So that's something you're going to have to know. Also, your neighbors. And anybody who's followed my YouTube channel, I have discussed neighbors multiple times, and I've said it multiple times, and I'll say it again. You want to get into a good relationship with your neighbors. It's key, I'm telling you. If you have a bad relationship with your neighbors, I don't care if they're a mile away or if they're far away like mine are. If you have a bad relationship with your neighbors, it could very well be a deal breaker for you. It can really just ruin your life. I mean, there's TikTok accounts that I've seen that are dedicated to disputes with neighbors. As ridiculous and childish as that is, they are out there. I've seen them. It's stupid, but it does happen. I mean, if you get a bad neighbor, or you start off on the wrong foot with your neighbor, man, there's just so many things that can go wrong there, okay? So to me, it's really important that if you can, and I didn't do this right away, so this is kind of a hindsight thing. I was just fortunate enough that I was outgoing enough to actually go talk to my neighbors anyways. I didn't trespass or anything like that, but if I saw them out working or anything, I came and introduced myself. And there's a couple strategies that I use. Number one, I didn't talk a lot. I let them talk and I listen, because there's a lot of things that you may not know about those people and they don't know a lot about you. And if you just start running your mouth and saying a bunch of things, you just got to be very careful. So I just listened a lot. I got to kind of hear where they were coming from, got to hear some of their beliefs, their ideas. Believe it or not, people will tell you a lot if you just listen. So I just would listen. Whether I agreed or disagreed was not the point. I just listened and I got information. I said, okay, well, this guy's a little bit, he's got some beliefs. So I'm just going to steer clear of these conversations with him. If I don't agree, but so I know this guy, but he's a good dude. And, he seems like pretty friendly, and his big concern is he just didn't want, same concern I have, just doesn't want an asshole neighbor. So one of the rules that I think people should know before they buy land, and this is something that I've come up with, but I'm sure I'm not the first one. You may be happy to buy land, but that doesn't mean the people around you are happy that you bought that land. Does that make sense? So they may be used to, especially in rural areas, where they haven't had a neighbor in 20 years. And that's the case where I'm at. 20 years, parcel's been vacant. No neighbors. One day, now they have neighbors. So you got to kind of see it from their point of view, all right? I mean, let's face it. I mean, we like our space, right? So to them, they see it as like, man, I got a freaking neighbor. So they're not going to be super happy you're there, I'm telling you, more than likely. That's just the reality, folks. I don't make the rules. But more than likely, they're not going to be super excited to have neighbors, all right? So yes, you own the parcel, and yes, you may have paid for it in cash. Yes, you feel like you have just as much a right to be there as them. I'm not saying you don't, but I'm saying if you want to make your time good there, you want to be fairly non-aggressive and very accommodating to them too. Don't look at it like, oh, I'm here, I'm going to be the big bully, and I'm going to just start, doing whatever the hell I feel like, and they don't like it too bad. You go in there with that attitude, you're just really going to create problems for yourself. That's what you got to realize. You're not going to just create problems for them, you're going to create problems for yourself, because ultimately, approach determines response. And I'm not trying to teach you how to interact with people, but I'm just saying from being in a rural area, one thing that you learn is that I lived in Tucson for, 23 years before I moved out here. And I got used to city life. And even though I grew up in a rural place, I lived in the city for a long time. So when we came out here, it was a real change of pace, and people are just different. So what you'll learn is that you can live in a city and you can live in a subdivision for a decade, and you may never even have a conversation with the person across the street from you or the person diagonal from you. I knew all my direct neighbors, but I couldn't even tell you the names of the people that live like directly across the street from me. But when you buy land out in a rural area, one of the things you realize is that even though there's all this space around and there's only a few people or a couple people, they see everything you do because it's the only thing going on out here. So if I'm out here building something, they're going to know I'm building something and they're going to see it. You almost feel like you're being watched more in these areas. So it's kind of a weird feeling, to be quite honest with you. But it's not bad. I just would say this, that I am so thankful that I get along well with the two neighbors that I have out here. And even though one of them's like a mile up the road and the other one's, hundreds of yards away, we barely ever see each other. But it's still a good feeling to know that we get along well. We wave at each other. There's no animosity, no problems. Anytime I went to put a fence up, I talked with him, made sure that I was on the right side of the line. I asked him where the line was, and it, matched up with what I had on my survey stuff, and it was no big deal. Both of us were fine with it. It was just, and I wasn't fencing him out. I just wanted to fence the cows off my property. So anyways, folks, that's really important when you're buying land. You try to get to know the neighbors and just kind of do some reconnaissance, because you just never know what you're getting into. There could be a real good reason that parcel's vacant in the first place, okay? So another thing you're going to have to realize is that if you buy land with the intention of building on it, you may have to put off your homesteading stuff for a while. And that's what's happened to us. Like, I was really into homesteading and I wanted to buy land to homestead. But then what happened was we just started to getting into the house building phase. And now I'm not really doing too much homesteading now. It's mostly in the house building. So that's something you have to look at. And honestly, I did more homesteading stuff when we were in the city and when we lived in the subdivision. So that could be a surprise to you. And even though we have close to, I think we have 16 acres, I spend probably 95% of my time on less than an acre. As surprising as that sounds, I hardly ever walk around this whole property because I'm so busy building infrastructure and doing all these other things. So this is something that might come to a surprise or be a surprise to you. All right, folks. So this is the part of the podcast where I do listener emails, texts, phone calls. Right now, I have one email, and this is from Journey with Nicole. I believe she has a YouTube channel here. Okay, so it says, "Hi there. Thanks for your inspiration in today's podcast." This was from last week. "Appreciating the journey. I am a new homesteader in northern Arizona. I learned how to grow and preserve food while I lived in Phoenix, but the climate is so different that I find myself back at square one with learning. I can relate with you there. I'm a bit frustrated. It's just myself, 55-year-old, absolutely no construction type experience. After much perseverance, I have thrown in the towel at the possibility of me being able to build anything. So I started incorporating sandbags. I have tons of sand, so the sandbags are becoming my friend. I put a beautiful granite countertop on sandbags. I formed a cabinet around a countertop with a sink in it. I made raised beds. I use them as anchors for my greenhouse. I use them for flower pots, etc. So my main question is, do you think it would be possible to make an outdoor shower stall or bathtub with sandbags and maybe cob or clay slip? Not many people have experience with sandbags or cob, so your advice is appreciated. It would be a lot of work to find out it wouldn't work, so I am weighing my options. Thank you for all you do. Best wishes to you, Nicole." Well, first of all, thank you very much, Nicole, for writing in, and I do appreciate it. I will say a couple things right off the bat, just from reading this email. I can definitely relate with you on a couple things. Number one was the having to go back to square one. We did the same thing. We moved to high desert from Tucson, which, we're at 4,200 feet here. Tucson's like less than 2,500 feet elevation. So the climate here is different, and we have a little harsher winters here than we do in Tucson. So I get where you're coming from there. The no construction type experience, it is what it is. I hear you. I've had, been fortunate enough, I guess at the time I didn't consider it fortunate. It was hard, but I was fortunate enough to be dealing with construction, with my occupation. So yeah, it could be definitely a learning curve. Now, as far as with the sandbags, I, of course, for those that don't know, I've built an earth bag building with sandbags, and I've done, a lot of work with them out here, and I use them a lot out here, and I fill them and all that. So I do have some experience with them, and I will say that absolutely you can build a shower stall or even a bathtub with them. In fact, I don't know the names of the homesteads, but I have seen actually a couple out here that are building cisterns with sandbags. They're using like the hyper adobe, but it'd be the same idea. So all you would have to do, at least for me, this is what I would do. I would use a liner, the same type of liner that you would use for any type of bathroom job. Like if you're doing like an install for tile in a bathroom, or you're installing a shower, I would just use some type of a liner. You could even probably get away with a pond liner and do the inside of it with that. I don't know, however, like if clay's going to work too well for that. Just my opinion. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I personally would just go to something more cement based. A stucco, even a ferro cement. You could put a lath on top of that. You could put the liner, so you set your bags up, you make your structure, and then you can do the liner. And then you could put a lath over top of that liner, which is like, it looks like chicken wire, but it's called lath. Or you could just use chicken wire. I've done that before. And then what that does is that holds your plaster or your stucco into place. And then you can put on your stucco, or you could probably do some type of mixture that's more water resistant. But ferro cement is a good one. If you look up ferro cement, basically, I did it in the earth bag on one of the ledges in there. And all you do is you use multi layers of like lath. You can go up to like 5 layers of chicken wire. And all you do then after that is you put your cement mix, which is basically cement and sand mixed together, different ratios. And you put it on there like you would apply a stucco. And once it's on, after you do a few coats of it, it's like super hard shell. And people make cisterns out of them. So yeah, it's definitely doable. But I would use the liner, at least on the inside portion. And that's just kind of a general broad idea. I mean, there's probably a few other details there, but yeah, I mean, you can definitely do it. And I know I have watched videos. I just can't remember the names of the homesteads. If you want to remind me, send me another email, and then I can actually find those for you and send you a couple links if you like. So anyways, thank you for reaching out there. So if anybody wants to reach out with any questions, I'll try to answer them. Obviously, I'm not really an expert at too many things, but I am a kind of a jack of all trades here. So I do have some experience in a lot of different things with homesteading. So to summarize the land thing, I've kind of given you some insight here on the land and given you a few tips that I learned along the way. I will say that overall having land has been pretty rewarding to me and to my wife, but there were definitely challenges with having land that I did not even realize I was going to have. I didn't quite expect that I would be spending so much time in the building and clearing the land and dealing with all types of different issues that come with buying land that were expenses that I never even knew I was going to have. So I would say that before you just jump into buying land, you first really do need to ask yourself that why question. You have to say to yourself, am I buying land for the right reason? Like, do I absolutely have to have land to do what I want to do? Like, if you just want a garden, you might decide that just, you could lease property from somebody to do that, or you could do like some of the things that people do, or they do in cities where they find vacant parcels and they just do some farming on those parcels. You can reach out to the landowners for that. So you don't necessarily have to buy a parcel to do that. You can do a community garden, maybe try that out. So while I do think that having land is definitely going to be something that can be rewarding for you in the long run, just kind of like the quote at the beginning there, is just to realize that, we don't really own land. That's the weird thing, right? It's kind of more of the philosophical part of it, but it's something I think about. I realize it's like, I don't really own the land here. This is just, it's a piece of paper that says I own it. And I am basically a steward of the land here until I pass on, and then someone else gets it. So I wouldn't really just be set on if I don't have land, I can't homestead. That's probably the biggest misconception I see. In fact, I've seen some really successful homesteads that were urban based, even in Phoenix. And so, where the climate is super harsh there and people are still having success homesteading there. So don't think you need to have land to do it. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and take off here and get back to work. Hope everybody's having a good one. I'll talk to you soon.